And we're back. We are joined today by Dylan Altemara from the Pennsylvania Equality Project. Dylan, what can you tell us about the Pennsylvania Equality Project and your role therein?
Yeah, so currently I serve as the president of the organization. Prior to that, over the last few years, I had served as the vice president and also for a period as the director of legislative affairs. And currently, at this time, as you know, within the community, there's a number of issues that are front and center. Because obviously, what we're trying to achieve here is just to make sure that folks feel protected and represented. The other side talks a lot about freedom, and I think allowing people the ability to, just live their lives how they feel is best for them is the definition of that. And so, through some of the work that we've been able to do and some of the advocacy that we've been able to take on, I think we've been able to move the ball forward. Certainly, in just again allowing people to have the personal freedom to exercise the decisions they make in their lives.
Among the bills that is now pending in the Pennsylvania legislature is Senate Bill 9,
Mhm.
which it's called something along the lines of the Save Women's Sports Act. In
Right.
other words, student athletes that are competing on teams have to compete on teams that match their sex assigned at birth
Right.
rather than their gender identity. So this
Mhm.
this bill came from the Republican controlled Senate. It's now
Mhm.
sitting in the House,
Mhm.
and the House has managed to slow things down
Right.
with this bill. It doesn't look like it's ever going to emerge from the House.
Right.
Um, what can people do to speak out on this matter, or what do they say? How do you go about convincing people that we don't really need this bill?
Right. Well, first and foremost, I can understand and appreciate any effort to, make the playing field fair for women. However, it's too bad that instead of using the opportunity to pursue basically a messaging bill, the Republicans instead don't try to make an effort towards, fair pay. For or equal pay, and there's another variety of other issues too, particularly making sure that we don't have forced birth for women in this state and other states. So I think there's just a number of things that can be done specific to women and women's issues that I would love to work with the Republicans on. But as it comes to the hysteria surrounding transport participation, it's really no different than what we've seen in the past when, trans bathroom bills were a thing and CRT was a thing, and then that kind of morphed into DEI. The truth of the matter, David, is, Republicans love to push woke so they can keep you broke. It's all about distracting you in front of the bank as they and their donors are around back cleaning the place out. And certainly Senate Bill 9, I think, is a problem in search of a solution. I understand some people might have concerns just on face value as it relates to fairness in sports because those that are transitioning from male to female in their minds might have certain biological advantages that cis women who are competing don't have. There have been various studies on that issue. I think it is still very much an issue that might need some additional scientific investigation. But I would say this, the IOC, which is the organizing body for the Olympics, has left it to be a sport by sport consideration. I think, that's probably, if it's good enough for the Olympics, that's probably the path that makes the most sense, certainly at lower levels of sports. So I don't think it's the issue that the Republicans make it out to be. But again, they need some sort of wedge issue because if they have to talk about the rest of the agenda, it's not a very voter supported agenda.
Right. And I would think there are certainly other more important measures or issues at stake. For example, within the public school system across Pennsylvania,
Right.
I know in the next, what is it now, 2.5 to 3 weeks, school buses are going to be rolling through the streets of Pittsburgh, of course, and throughout Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And as kids are getting on the bus and going off to school and they're going through their studies, one of the places at every school across Pennsylvania that kids are going to have to go to be able to complete research assignments or to continue their studies is the school library.
Mhm.
And one of the issues that's come up is it appropriate to have books on LGBTQ plus topics within school libraries?
Mhm.
How important is an issue is this, or should it be to our listeners?
Well, again, I think that, schools and libraries are bedrocks of the community whose job it is to educate individuals about what's going on in the real world. And I understand, some people, particularly some parents, might have objections personally about, LGBTQ plus content being there. But what I would say is no one's making you or your kid read the book. And I think just simply existing and allowing the author to have free speech rights by putting forth concepts or ideas that they have shouldn't be viewed as offensive. I think we should have thicker skin, and we should recognize that, through the First Amendment, we have the ability to share ideas and opinions. And just by a book being on the shelf, doesn't pose no immediate danger to you or to your child. And certainly, I think if you are of the opinion that your child should not be reading a particular book up until a certain age, that is your right to perhaps withhold that material from them. But I hope that at some point they make the decision as an adult to, really kind of educate themselves about all the different facets of society. And if it's something that they, like you, are comfortable or aren't comfortable with, that's their right. Certainly. But at the same time, I think the truth of the matter is, if folks have the ability to educate themselves about everything that's going on through the literature, they most likely find that it's really not all that offensive or all that extreme at all. But again, when you can't really offer people solutions to make their daily lives better, you have to give the illusion of governing. So, trying to push bans on certain books is again a problem in search of a solution.
Okay, but to that point,
Yeah.
um, the reason this is such a relevant topic is that back in June, the
Mhm.
U.S. Supreme Court heard the case of Mahmoud v. Taylor from Montgomery County, Maryland, in which parents objected to LGBTQ plus books being read, especially grades five or so and younger,
Mhm.
to their children, and the
Mhm.
fear was that parents should be given the option to allow their children to be exempt from such lessons.
Right.
Okay, where do you take a stand on points like that and the Mahmoud v. Taylor case?
Right. So I think with respect to this case, I mean, it's a situation where I think I would like to see ultimately all of the different legal organizations that signed on to the case, because I really suspect it's not how it was presented, where it's just a group of parents who are concerned. I think a lot of times in right-wing litigation, what happens is you have these well-funded networks that basically case shop and they client shop. And I suspect that's particularly what happened here. As far as, excluding kids from, curriculum that parents aren't comfortable with, I don't have necessarily an issue with it if again, it's a sincere disagreement that they have. But I would say that if you go to well, let's take that back. If you go to all public schools in Pennsylvania, to make it seem as if they've become these, indoctrination camps that force, LGBTQ plus concepts is ridiculous. Because I would say that number one, it's a challenge for most school districts, increasingly more and more, just to provide the basic resources needed to educate kids on core content issues. And again, when you factor in a lot of the issues that students are facing in their home lives, whether it's, poverty, whether it's homelessness, whether it's, mental health issues, domestic abuse issues, it's becoming increasingly more difficult just to get kids to school. So again, I think it's a situation where, if there is a book or if there is a lesson that you as a parent aren't comfortable with and you want to pull your kid from it, that's your right. But to act as if it's this far-reaching problem that is, jeopardizing the idea of public education, I think is a bit of a stretch.
So, but doesn't that put additional burden on teachers having to have having to send informational notices to parents, letting them know or informing them that this particular content is coming up in your student's classroom within the next few days or weeks, and
Mhm.
you have to opt in to be able to stay into the within the lesson, or you have to opt out to pull your kid out.
Mhm.
It seems like additional burdensome paperwork for teachers.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I could see that it could certainly be an additional, paperwork requirement for teachers. I think, honestly, though, like if the parents and the teachers have a really good, a good relationship, that there should be, I think, an understanding for what's coming down the pike. And I don't really think that it would be all that different than, for example, what you see for perhaps students who are or Jewish or other faiths around Christmas time, where it's just going to be like a quick, hey, coming down the pike, we might be doing a Christmas coloring sheet. So if you might have some issues with that, FYI, it's coming down the pike, just so you know. And I think, certainly the same could be applied as it relates to, LGBTQ plus related content. And again, David, as you know, this isn't something that is happening a lot. It's certainly not even representative of more than I would say 5% of the curriculum throughout a given course in a given semester. So I think the concerns of it are kind of overblown, certainly. But that being said, if there is a lesson or a concept, whether it's through Schoology or some other platform, student information system, I think if the teacher just puts a brief statement out there just to cover themselves, that should be more than sufficient to, cover any liability or legal obligation they have. And then really it kind of puts the ball back in the parents' court as far as, how dialed in are they as far as what their students learning. And if they have an objection to it, pull them out of the lesson.
So, and we got time for one more question before we
Right.
take our next break, and it comes down to this. So, there are other very important LGBTQ issues facing Pennsylvanians
Right.
beyond healthcare for the trans community and beyond the books that are used within classrooms. Among them are issues related to immigration,
Hmm.
which I think are pretty serious. There are a number of LGBTQ immigrants who are now afraid to go out in public, especially in larger cities,
Right.
for fear of things that happened recently down in the Pittsburgh area. The down at the bar.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name of the bar. The
Right.
Blue Moon, I think it was.
Mhm.
But there was a raid by Pennsylvania State Police.
Right.
And what can you tell the LGBTQ community in terms of comforting them or giving them some reassurance that in your role, both as president of Pennsylvania Equality Project and hopefully your future role as a legislator,
Mhm.
that will assure them that, hey, it's safe to be out in public and it's safe to speak out?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, again, we have to make sure at all levels of the government that we're respecting people's First Amendment rights. And I think, unfortunately, because of political pressure, what you're seeing is the Democratic Party is becoming, I think, more and more complicit in going along with these raids that, frankly, kind of remind me of some of the imagery that you saw of Nazi Germany. I think, just to put it out there, I think anybody certainly is open and is okay with, violent, dangerous individuals who pose a risk to the community, being taken care of and being deported. But to make it seem as if that is what the vast majority of immigrants are, it is frankly disingenuous. And again, it's drumming up an issue to scare people into voting for a party that once they assume power will have every opportunity, will take no will will not think twice about stabbing them in the back on economic issues. And so that's, I think, what we're really seeing here. And I think that, what we really need to push, and what I certainly will push in my capacity as the president of the organization, but also hopefully once I'm in Harrisburg, is the need for comprehensive immigration reform and the establishment of a pathway to citizenship. I think if you're here, if you're being productive, if you're contributing to the community, if you're contributing, frankly, to the tax base and to programs like Medicare and Social Security through your participation in the workforce, it's really vital that our federal electeds and hopefully future president can get their shit together and put together legislation that will, protect people that are just simply trying to put a better life for themselves and their families together.
Okay, well, on that note, we are going to take yet another quick break. When we come back, we have got plenty of other issues to discuss. So stick around. We'll be back in about a minute here on Pet Talks Uncut.